Hi guys, hi to everyone popping in. How's everyone's Saturday going? Mine has been completely unproductive. So I'll wait a second because we still have people joining. Hi Colleen, hi everyone joining. Knitty, I'm glad it's knitty. I'm still trying to finish my sweater, so I'm hoping mine is knitty as well in a minute. So that's awesome. I haven't dyed fiber ever. So I was watching Juliana's Periscope yesterday, and if you haven't gotten to see it yet, I really suggest you do because it's really awesome. Hi! It's really awesome and inspiring how she talks about Periscope and how it kind of has affected everyone's lives. And one of the things I mentioned was that it's kind of like, hi Chris! I mentioned that it's kind of like we know each other and we're friends, and I really like that about Periscope because unlike a podcast where, you know, I talk to a camera and you guys watch, there's no interaction. So if I was lucky enough to meet some of you at a festival, that would be the end of it. So with Periscope, it's really nice that I get to like talk to you guys, and it's kind of like I told her it's like we're best friends. I only met Juliana through Periscope. I would have never known of her. I think she's an amazing person from what I've seen. And that's why I really like this app. So what I thought I would do is tell you a little about myself, which I've never actually done. I guess I just assumed everyone knew who I was because we've all been friends on Twitter for a while. But my name is Vanessa, and I am originally from Long Island, New York. And I moved to Florida when I was 15. Went to school there, finished out high school, and I always thought I was really kind of like misguided and didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was running in circles. And after I graduated, after 2 years of just not doing anything with my life, I ended up joining the Air Force. So I got stationed in Dover, Delaware, and for some weird reason, I have been here for almost 13 years. It is extremely unheard of to be at one duty station for more than 4, let alone 13. I didn't like it when I was younger, but I've made peace with it now, and now it's kind of like Delaware is my home. I've met amazing people here, like Colleen, rabies on my shoes, not too far from me. And now I kind of want to stay here, which is weird. But so I am an air traffic controller for the Air Force. Not what I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be a hairstylist. I'm a beauty school dropout, except I actually didn't drop out. I finished, I just never worked. So I did finish hair school. Turned out it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I thought I would be a fashion designer or a makeup artist. I do know Eggers. Tim? Or he's Egger, or Drew. Because we have an Egger and we have an Eggers. So Mr. Eggers, yes, I know Drew. I work with him every day. And I know his sons, one of his sons, I've met a couple times. But yeah, I love him. He's sweet. And his mustache. So I'm a controller at Dover Air Force Base. I took some notes so I wouldn't get, that's awesome. His wife is your childhood friend. I took some notes so I wouldn't forget what I was saying because I tend to do that a lot. So I joined the Air Force. I started my shop when I started knitting. Okay, so I started knitting in 2009. And the reason I started knitting was because I've deployed to Iraq twice. The first time I deployed was in 2005. Didn't know what to expect. Bored out of my mind. So the second time they deployed me to Iraq in 2009, I figured I need to come up with a hobby. I need to figure something out. I got lipstick on my teeth. I need to figure something out or I'm going to be really bored. So back in 2009, when I first started trying to knit, there was really like nothing on the internet. Not in YouTube videos, there wasn't anything. I tried to learn out of a book. It didn't work for me. I was lucky enough to find knittinghelp.com. If you guys are familiar with that site, knittinghelp.com is how I learned how to knit. So I started knitting in 2009, and after a couple of years, I figured out I wanted to own a shop. I thought I would own a gift shop and sell like jewelry because I have a thing for jewelry. So I started dabbling, and I've always been a crafty person. Like, I haven't showed you guys my craft room yet. It's filled with scrapbooking stuff because I tried scrapbooking. Turned out it isn't exactly, I didn't find Ravelry. I'll tell you how I found Ravelry in a minute. So, I'll tell you, so we'll go with how I started my shop later. So when I was in Iraq in 2009 and I was knitting, I was lucky enough to find someone had made a Stitch and Bits group on Yahoo through Yahoo Groups, and they were from Dover. And I emailed them when I was in Iraq, and when I came back home, I went to their little group, and it turns out it was my friend Andy and her grandmother and a friend of hers, about 4 people. And I started hanging out with them, and they're the ones that told me about Ravelry. I had no idea. Didn't find Ravelry. It didn't come up in a search on, probably because I was searching how to knit, not like knitting sites. So once I found Ravelry and like got on there and realized how awesome and fun it was, that's when I started to become a better knitter. And looking at all the patterns and the things that I could make. And one of the things I really wanted to learn how to make was socks, which I mentioned before. Colleen Rabies on My Shoe is the one who showed me how to knit that. And once she showed me that, I keep getting lipstick on teeth. That's why I hate red lipstick. When she showed me that, knitting was my life. So I started the shop when I started dabbling in crafts and figuring out like, what can I make that would be fun to sell on Etsy, because I love making things. I started selling cards because I make handmade cards. I started just selling my paper crafts and stuff. I was in Michael's and I saw, I think Clover had some knitting stitch markers. I think they have a few with like the little dangly charms like I make. And I started searching around for charms and thought, I'm going to make a few sets of these for myself. So I made some sets for myself. I got some charms in, and I had all these charms, and I was like, well, I could sell the rest of them because I have all these charms. I can't use all these markers. And when Stacy of I love handmade cards, I love making them, I still do. So when Stacy of Mustache Yarns found me on Etsy, and she bought a pair of my stitch markers and she podcasts about them, bam. So I always tell Stacy that she's responsible for the success of my shop. So that's how I started. And one of the things I was very particular about when I named my shop, I named it the Vintage Rose because I love pink roses, Knitting Boutique. And Knitting Boutique because boutique has a little bit of everything, and I didn't want to specialize in any one thing. I didn't want to be a stitch marker maker and not have cards, or I just wanted to be multi-craftual and have a little bit of everything. So you guys know my shop, or if you haven't, it's vintageroseloves.com. I do have a shop on Etsy as well, which is the Vintage Rose KB. I'm basically a form of the Vintage Rose everywhere, whether it's Ravelry, Vintage Rose, Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And the Vintage Rose will be a brick and mortar shop coming soon. Soon to be determined, either from 1 year to 6 years, but I will take my shop. Thank you very much. I will take my shop and I will make it an actual store. And that is my goal. So there we go. That's my story. So this lipstick teeth thing, I don't know if I'm imagining it or if it just keeps happening. So excuse me with that. Thank you. Yep, I'm planning it ahead of time because there's a couple factors involved. So we'll see. It really all depends. I have 7 years left to retirement in the Air Force, and I'm trying to decide if that's something I want to do. Oh, that's awesome. You're teaching kids classes for knitting? Are you teaching them to knit? I lost my train of thought. So my husband is a controller. I met him in the Air Force, and he separated from the Air Force. Thank you. No lipstick on my teeth. He separated from the Air Force, and we just found out a week ago that that he got hired in Arkansas. Oh, you're going to teach kids classes for my shop. I love it. Yep, Colleen's working in my shop. So Ryan got a job in Arkansas, and he's moving. That will really, because of that, if he can't come back here or whatever, I might not stay in the Air Force, or maybe I just don't want to. So I might, I have 1 year left on this enlistment, and we'll see if I stay in. I really am not planning on it right now. So a year to 6 years. So what I did want for knitting wise to show you guys is how I knit my socks, because it is Socktober, right? And everyone's knitting socks. I'm still trying to finish my Rhinebeck sweater. I messed up last night. I realized that I was knitting the length of the wrong size. I guess I just got so excited I looked at the wrong thing. No, Philly didn't have anything. So in a year, he can hopefully apply to transfer in a year, and hopefully he can get Philly. That's the end goal. So I'm trying to finish my sweater. I knit to the wrong length. So when I tried it on, it was too short. So I had to undo the ribbing and add another inch to it. And now I'm back at the ribbing. So enough, you'll see that later. So how I knit my socks is, I am loving this bag still from Star Knits because it is perfectly tiny and adorable. This is Kirby Werby's Bermuda Triangle. This was from the summer kit that we did a while back. So I knit my socks on 9-inch circs. I know a lot of people say that they've tried it and they don't like it. I'll tell you that I was one of those people. I tried it and I didn't like it. And Cherie, Kirby Werby, insisted that I not give up. So the thing about knitting on 9-inch circs, good. All right, so there's a few of us 9-inch circulars out there. The thing about knitting on 9-inch circs is I don't know if you do it with the toe or the cuff, use the 9 inches, but I don't. So I do use, these are Addy Rockets or Sock Rockets. I love these needles. I do use a separate magic loop for the toes and the heels, and then I switch over and transfer the stitches onto the 9 inches. You should try it, and I'm going to tell you a couple things too, because it can be frustrating. So one of the things about it is because, I'm partial to Knit Picks and Addy Rockets. I have tried Signatures and I just really didn't like it. Yeah, wow, okay. I found it to be a little more complicated to use the 9-inch circs for the toe and the heel, so I ended up switching out. So that's how I do it, but you can use the 9 inches. So the 9 inches for me, and I'm sure I've heard for some people, it loosens your gauge. Because the way you have to hold these needles, and one of the reasons why people quit with them is because it feels really uncomfortable. And it feels really uncomfortable because the way that you have to hold these is not the way that you normally hold needles for knitting. You kind of have to adjust. And when you adjust and to knit with the 9 inches, it loosens your gauge. It does take a lot of getting used to. So in order for me to get the standard 8 stitches per inch on a regular needle, I have to use a 2.5. I'm a continental knitter. I knit really tight, and a 2.5 will give me 8 stitches per inch, which is what I like to knit my socks out and most patterns call for. So these 9-inch circs are 2 because that's how much my gauge differs using the 9 inches. So my 9 inches are a 2, and I use, if I wanted for it to be all of the same, I would use a size 2.5 for my heel and my heel, my toe, and the top of my sock. But because you put a lot of hardware on your heel, and not really, yeah, it is a lot of a difference. I know, everyone uses, I think Cherie told me that she's using like zeros right now for her socks. Yeah, I knit really, really tight. So I now, because you put a lot of wear and you put a lot of, I can't even think of the word, but you know what I'm talking about. So for the toes and the heels, I actually end up using a 2. So with the regular size 2, I'm now getting a tighter gauge for my heels and my toes than I would. So I am using a size 2 and a size 2, but that is because the heel, the toe are a totally different gauge than the rest of the sock, and I did that to make the stitches tighter and make them more durable on the heels. So something to think about when you're using these. Like I mentioned before, if you try to use these and for the first time, you might get some pain in your hands, and that's because you're holding them the way that muscle memory that you learn from knitting so often, the way you knit is already ingrained in your body now. Your body remembers it. So that's how you pick these up and you try to knit like that. But that's not the way that you have to knit with these. So you kind of have to, instead of how you hold your knitting needles, however you guys hold them, you kind of have to bend upwards. And when you knit with these, you're not knitting with these this way like you normally would. You got to knit with them kind of teed or up. And that's what makes the gauge looser. So you're kind of knitting upwards where the needles are crossed like that. It gets a little fiddly when you start the toe, or how I knit toe up. I didn't mention that. So I knit toe up, and when you start the toe, because it's small, yeah, which way, tight or which part? Oh, like this normally. Okay, well then it might be a little easy for you then, or easier for you to adjust. Because the toe is small and it increases, once you transfer your toe, once you transfer your toe, there's not a lot here, and it gets tight. But the more that you knit, no ladders. Yeah, exactly why. And I'll talk about that in something else too. So once you get more mileage or you've knit for a little bit, it gets easier. The tips are shorter, so there's nothing to hold in your palm. Yep, exactly. Because they're shorter, there's nothing there. So there you go. You hold them upwards. So if you're starting to knit with 9-inch circs and you're starting to feel pain in your hands, start just adjusting and trying different things. You also have to do a lot of sliding with your other hands on these. I'm constantly taking my thumbs and pushing, sorry, I'm trying to do this way, pushing the yarn over because you got so much little space to work with, or so little space to work with there. But the thing I like about 9-inch circs is that there's no stopping. There's no adjusting the needle when you're magic looping, adjusting, your magic loop. I have tried DPNs. I cannot knit with them for the life of me. I get ladders insane. I think that you do that too. Awesome. I think that when you learn to knit something a certain way, that's always the most comfortable. So people who have learned on DPNs, that's the way they like it. They're used to it. They're good at it. So it's hard to change. I learned to magic loop, and good, awesome, and stick with it. She said she's going to try this new method and she's excited. Okay, so I start the toe and heel. Okay, awesome. You learned on DPNs and you love magic loop. So I love magic loop too. But once I learned to knit on 9-inch circs, I now have 9-inch circs in every size because I use 9 inches and I have 12-inch. Addie makes 12-inch circs. That's how I knit sleeves on my sweater. If there is an opportunity for me to use a circular needle and one needle, I'll use it. So for the toes and the heels, someone asked, how do you start? I use Judy's Magic Cast On. There's a tutorial on YouTube that's awesome. For I think about 4 pairs of socks, I continually had to keep watching the video because I kept forgetting. Because you knit the toe and then you kind of don't remember anymore. But that's all right. Just like save that video. So Judy's Magic Cast On, you can use a Turkish cast on. And I start it here. Then I do all of the increases. I used to do make ones left and right. Now I just do knit to the front and the back. Because I liked how it kind of widened up the toe instead of the make ones were squishing them down. So I increase up to whatever I need for my whole circumference, and then I switch them over to the 9-inch circs. So that's how I do it. And then I am a fan of the afterthought heel because I do a lot of self-striping. And the afterthought heel is the only heel that I found that keeps the striping sequence. I know a lot of people like the fish lips kiss heel. Did I say that right? Fish lips kiss. And I don't like what that does to the stripes. So I really like keeping the stripes. Now the other thing I do, so I'm going to show you how I use the stitch markers here. So I count, this is after I've done increasing, the stitch marker marks the first stitch, or the first row, so that when I'm counting where I'm going to put my heel in, I count from this marker here. So then I knit, mine is, I have big feet. Well, I don't have big feet. I have big feet for me. I'm only 5'3", and I have size 8.5 to 9 shoes. So big feet for my little body. So I knit to about 64 rows, and then I stick in where I'm going to put my heel. And this is actually the 65th. And that's because that's the row that's going to come out. If you guys have you do afterthoughts, I can't even remember how I did them before. The way I do my afterthought heels now is I cut. Have you guys seen the tutorial? Kirby Werby has one on cutting the yarn for the afterthought heel. I like that method better than leaving the gap. I don't even remember how I used to afterthought because I've done it this way for so long, but the normal way of the afterthought with the waste yarn, that's what it was. The waste yarn. All right, so with the waste yarn, the size 5, yeah, but small feet are cute. So with the waste yarn, when you pull out the waste yarn and you put in your afterthought heel, I was having a hard time with ladders, and you use a lot less yarn. I am envious of that. So I was getting the ladder when, you pull out the waste yarn, there's the gap, and I was having a really hard time closing it, and I was like having to sew it and having that hard gap. So when you do the afterthought where you actually, Kirby Werby's Afterthought Heel No Waste yarn, I think it's called. So when you cut that row, you only cut out, okay, I will definitely Twitter the link later, I'll find it. So when you cut out that yarn, you don't pull it out all the way. You leave, when you're pulling it out, you leave about 2 stitches on this side and 2 stitches on that side, you don't unravel it. So when you go ahead, you pick up your stitches and you throw in your Afterthought Heel, there's no hole. Absolutely no hole whatsoever, no gap. And I love it. That is my favorite way. So there you go. That's how I knit my socks. I will post the Twitter link later. If you guys have any questions, you can email me at vintageroseloves@gmail.com, or you can tweet me, or Instagram now is private messaging, so you can private message me. And I want the whole world to knit on 9-inch circs because it is the best thing in the world and it goes so quickly. It's zen, like round and around and around and around. Like once you're past the toe, you just go up until you're done and it's perfect. A lot of the times I knit my socks 2 at a time on 2 separate 9-inch circs simultaneously. So I have 2 and I'll knit a couple rows on this, not a couple rows, but like a couple stripes on this one, switch to the other sock, go a couple on that side. I split the ball in half, have 2 cakes or whatever. This way you don't get that second sock syndrome. So it's not like magic looping 2 socks at a time. Yes, try again. So instead of magic and doing 2 at a time on the same needle, that's one way to do it. You don't get that second sock syndrome. You just bounce back and forth between the 2. And because October is Halloween-tober, when I do finish my Rhinebeck sweater, I'm going to be starting Halloween socks with this Gail's Art sock blank. Have you guys seen hers? 2 at a time on 2 circs. So I just discovered Gail's Art, and it was because if you follow Knittables on Instagram, she posted this and I had to have it. You're very welcome. I'm pleased to share. I want the whole world to learn how easy it is to use 9-inch circs. So this is a sock blank and it's all Halloween-y and awesome. And this is the one that's double. So I'll get 2 identical socks from this. I've never knit from a sock blank before, so I'm pretty excited to try it. So we'll see what happens. If I can finish my sweater and get some socks going, then I could have a Halloween Socktober as well. So you're using the double sock blank? Awesome. You have 2 of hers. Awesome. I saw them at Maryland Sheep and Wool and I didn't know what they were. So I didn't get any, and I'm kind of glad that I got this one now because I'm here and they're awesome. So I'm so scatterbrained. Another thing about me is I am very scatterbrained and I forget what I'm saying a lot. So sorry about that. But happy Saturday, guys. And any questions, just let me know. This is the double sock because I've mentioned a couple of times I'm a Virgo. And when things don't line up properly, it freaks me out. Hold on. When I forgot to mention, when I do my socks and they're self-striping, I will pull out to the next color so I can assure if you knit from the right, you might not lock it. It's kinky. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. This might help you guys too. To make your stripes line up so that your socks are identical, well, one, you can use Stacy Mustache Yarn's OCD kit. That'll work. But if you do not have Stacy's yarn, you can use this method. Pull out to the color. So like knit straight from the blank. Okay, so with regular self-striping, pull out till you get a full color because you never know where the yarn was cut when they skeined it. So go to the next color. Take a ruler, this is a lot of work, but take a ruler, measure like 6 inches or whatever you need to start your cast on. Keep that in mind, you started 6 inches in, and then when you go to do the other side, do the same thing, start at the same point. So you know you measured 6 inches on the last one, and that's where you started your cast on. Measure 6 inches and start 6 inches on the other side, and you will get perfectly matching socks all the way up. So hope my tips helped. Any questions, let me know. Have a happy Saturday knitting, and I'm going to go work on this sweater because I need to finish it. Talk to you guys later. Bye. You make great air traffic. Virgos make it. Thank you. I like air traffic control, but not what I want to do for the rest of my life, but awesome. All right. See you guys later.